part of Double P Media, doublepmedia.com.
Spoiler alert, this podcast is covering the most recently released episodes of The Crown on Netflix. If you haven't seen them yet, this podcast may spoil you. You've been warned. Welcome to Podcast Lilibet. I am Matt. I am only happy if I'm wrapped in a woolen nappy because we only have 1/15 of The Crown left to discuss on this podcast. We have 4 episodes left. That is all we have. And today, tackling 2 of them. Season 6, Episode 7, Alma Mater, written by Jonathan Wilson and Peter Morgan, directed by el-Toukhy. Not sure. I apologize, May, for mispronouncing your name. The synopsis on that. Now at university, William sets his eyes on Kate Middleton. With meddling parents and other prospects in the mix, how will their connection bloom? Well, if you watch the episode, you know not very well. In Season 6, Episode 8 is the other episode we're discussing called Writs. And that is Meriel, Sheibani-Clare, and Peter Morgan. She was one of the staff writers all season, and she got an episode. Directed by Alex Gabassi, a name that many people know from other television shows as well. Your synopsis there: after a series of strokes, a declining Margaret recalls a wild night with her sister at the Ritz in 1945 and later celebrates her 70th birthday there. As I mentioned, I am one of your hosts, but my other host is a world-renowned expert in the history of fart. It's Bubba.
You know what? After I hear an introduction like that, I just want to hang up. But I'm not going to, because I'm so grateful for the listeners who've been listening to our podcast all this time, so we can talk about these 2 episodes of The Crown Season 6. Can't wait.
Excellent. Well, let's get right into rating these episodes. And we'll start with rating Season 6, Episode 7, Alma Mater. Bubba, normally I always ask you first.
Normally,
and for some reason or another, I think that I am going to go first this time.
Wait, what? That's not fair.
I know, it's not fair, is it? I'm going 8.9 out of 10, what I like to call double L's.
Wait, double L's?
Library losers.
Oh, 8.9.
Will certainly struck out, man. He struck out big time, not with just one, but 2 girls. He's the only guy who's ever pulled a double play on himself in the course of a matter of minutes, man. I mean,
Matt, 8.9 out of 10. That is an odd score, and you do have a bit of an odd rating system where it's really 7 to 10 we're rating. I'm going to assume that you liked it okay, even though you went as high as 8.9. What are your real thoughts on this episode?
Well, there's just one thing. I like the episode. I imagine there's a lot of fiction in it, and I don't really care. I found the story pretty compelling in terms of, will they, won't they? And the kind of back and forth of that intrigued me a little bit. The thing that I really am starting to dislike is over the last few episodes, since the part 2 started, I'm feeling like I'm getting a lot of reasons to dislike Harry, but I'm not really getting a lot of reasons why. It's just the things that he's doing that's kind of turning me off. And I understand, he went through a very hard part of his life, losing his mother and everything like that. But I don't feel like the show is addressing it. And so anytime Harry is like passing out condoms to his brother in front of all of his family, or, saying the history of fart to his great grandmother, or, telling William that uni's only about sex, that he's got to do something disreputable so that he doesn't seem quite so bad. It just makes me feel like that. I mean, I have no idea how fictional or whatever this is, but I'm kind of getting the feeling after 4 episodes of this show that the show doesn't really like Harry very much, which seems strange to me, considering that Harry is going to be a big staple on the Netflix network, pretty soon, or has been, with documentaries and such.
Well, Matt, this is an episode where Harry really is periphery to the story. So that's your big takeaway.
Bubba. It really does, man.
Okay, sure. Sure. Well, that's so interesting that all your notes are about Harry. For when I give my rating, it's going to be about William, Prince William. So, Matt, my rating, you went 8.9. And a lot of people would think, boy, that's really high. I'm only going to give this episode 6 double O's out of 10.
Wow, wait, double O's?
Ordinary offspring. We hear so much, oh man, the royals, they're just like us. They're regular people who have the same problems and concerns as anyone has. And dear Lord, I watched this episode and I'm like, yeah, they are just like us. William, who may not have a personality discernible on the show, is just completely normal. His experiences aren't really traumatic or dramatic. They're things everybody goes through. Every person, I think, man, woman, child, has somebody they like, and sometimes they're not, able to jump on it and go out with someone they like. Everybody, has trouble that first semester away from home at college, at university, excuse me. And so there's just no there. It's kind of fascinating, but the little subtle hints of an interesting William that we saw in earlier episodes of season 6, he's kind of a blank slate. And maybe that's reading on somebody who's guarded his personality so well as William has, considering he's been in such a spotlight. But I don't feel like I have a great knowledge of him and what he wants and how he feels. And so to spend a whole episode on his troubles when, yes, they are troubles, but they're so dang ordinary, it doesn't feel right for this show. And so 6 out of 10. It was like a blank canvas, which is kind of the way I feel about the William character.
Well, I'll just transition to episode 8 by saying justice for Lola. I mean, what more personality do you want than a rageaholic, for crying out loud? So let's talk about the Ritz. And what would you rate that episode?
Okay, well, I'm going the other way on that episode. I'm going to give it 9 double C's out of 10.
Wait, double C's?
Yes, and you can feel free to edit this out. I'm giving it 9 Chesterfield cancers out of 10.
Wow.
So William, who I feel like is a blank slate, not much of a character, just kind of a dude, dare I say it, especially this late in the series. The exact opposite is true of Princess Margaret. We have spent 6 seasons getting to know this character, getting to know their quirks, their wants, their eccentricities, and to come to the end of this person's life, it is painful, as it is emotional. It's in a lot of ways why we invest and watch 6 seasons of a show, is to be taken on these journeys. And it's a tragic journey, and maybe in some ways it's a bit of an ordinary journey about how somebody does fade away at their end of their lives and kicking in addiction. If you spent all your life enjoying alcohol and sweet treats and smoking, is life worth living if you have to give those up? And so it's tragic nowadays. I hear anybody passes away at the age of 71, and it's sad. That shouldn't happen. I guess a final thing I'll say is that for so many weeks, we've been talking about these episodes, and it's like, oh boy, it's so close to, our present timeline. And this episode reminds me that, wait, no, this episode is still taking place about events over 20 years old. And so you're like, oh, wow. And so William doesn't have much of a personality. Margaret does. Margaret had a life, like literally was bursting with life on the show. And it's a heartbreaking, sad, but maybe perfect ending to this character's story. So 9 out of 10, I really enjoyed it. What about you? What did you feel about this episode 8 of season 6?
Well, I'm just going to circle around to your doubles, and I'm going to say, folks, send your hate mail.
Yes.
To at the word double, the letters please. PHQ, or just unfollow Fit and Trim on the site formerly known as Twitter. That's FITTENTRIM. What a monster. But went slightly higher than you on this one.
Okay.
Surprise, surprise, because I always go higher than you, seems like most of the time. 9.3 out of 10, what I like to call double J's.
Double J's?
Yeah, that stands for Jitterbug Jams. A band, man. Who wouldn't want to dance? Who wouldn't want to go downstairs and dance and do all of that? I loved that flashback. I thought that was a great way to encapsulate the life that Margaret had, the life that Margaret always wanted. The comparisons of number twos. We see Harry in the prior episode being kind of a disturber or what have you as a number two. And really, Margaret as a number two seems pretty tame by comparison. And so I loved the way that she stood up for herself. And it's not that Harry's not standing up for himself, I guess, in his own way, but it feels like it just feels like these two episodes work together really good for me thematically as a look at the number twos. And I love, and Bubba, I know you're not there yet, but I do love how this particular event really shapes the rest of the series, the final two episodes, or at least it does in my mind. I won't say anything more about that. You know, sometimes my mind goes way left field, so it could be completely different for you. But to me, it really influences it. I also just that whole flashback. I mean, I'm not an expert on what the 1940s look like or what have you, but I thought that all of those shots looked great. I think that these two young actresses, Bo Gadsden, who's actually played young Margaret before, back in season 1, back when she was of an age to be playing a girl that age for those shots, they just brought her back, and she did absolutely fabulous. Mainly, and I think it's because of however Vanessa Kirby was coached. There was a scene where at the beginning where she just starts to break away from the window, or break away from the guy that she's with, and looks out the window. And I just said, that's Vanessa Kirby's walk. I mean, it was the exact walk. I was thrilled by it. And I thought that this Viola Predijan also looked very much like a young Claire Foy. And we had a little bit of a conversation, which will lead to a parliamentary debate later, but we had a conversation about how she probably looks more like the young Queen Elizabeth than even Claire Foy did. So I loved all of that. On the other hand, you addressed the big point, which is this is the end of Margaret's life. And as someone who, sees stroke victims on a regular basis, some of this is kind of tough for me to watch. See, I'll never let you down, folks. I'll always find a way to wear my heart on my sleeve somehow. And it was tough to see some of these symptoms manifest or the after effects done remarkably well by this actress. It was really well done. And it was a beautiful but sad ending for Margaret's life. Correct. And I really like the way it affected Elizabeth as well. That's all I have to say for that. But folks, we want to know what you thought about that. You can send your emails to me, mattsaudioblog@gmail.com, mattsaudioblog@gmail.com, or you can send posts to me on the site formerly known as Twitter, Lilibet Pod, at Lilibet Pod there, Lilibet Pod. You can also send posts to Double PHQ on Twitter. The word double, the letters PHQ. Tell Bubba how much you absolutely loved his doubles for episode 8. You can also use that spelling for Facebook, facebook.com/the word double, the letters PHQ. All of the socials, Instagram, Threads, wherever you're at, just search for the word double, the letters PHQ, except YouTube. Find our videos, like our videos, subscribe to the channel, get those notifications so that you know when the next thing is coming down the pike for Double P Media. So that's youtube.com at the word double, the letter P, the word media. There's a slash in there somewhere. I'm not going to go back and correct myself again. Here's your 65-second recap of episode 7, Alma Mater. Back in the past, a young Kate Middleton and her mother happen upon a young Prince William and his mother Diana. Kate's fascination with William inspires her mother to meticulously plan Kate's future to align with the young prince's, ranging anywhere from gap year adventures to the choice of university and major. Though the attraction to each other seems mutual, stars don't align all that well for Will and Kate, as Will gets a girlfriend, makes a fool of himself in front of both that girlfriend and Kate gets a boyfriend. Will becomes quite miserable in the aftermath, and he consults with his family, including his partying brother and his royal grandmother, about his situation at uni.
Kate brings her boyfriend home to a disapproving mother, and when she confronts her mother, is told that William might leave St. Andrews. She sends him a text asking him not to leave, which is well received.
Bubba, the wheel is primed and ready to go. Why don't you give it a spin and tell me what it says?
And it lands right, probably not the true focus of the episode, but it is a interesting component of the episode, and that is about the mom who's got her eye on the prize. It's the Crown talking about another parent. We just got done with Dodie and Moo Moo, but here's another parent who is willing to help their child get in royal with the royalties. Any thoughts about actress Eve Best as Kate Middleton's mom, Matt?
Yeah, it's great to have, again, a queen who never was, but she's trying to make a queen. So that's awesome. I thought Eve Best did a great job. As far as Kate's mother, very ambitious. And, historically, again, this is a lot of these things are blown out to the point where they're just broad caricatures. But I love the fact that Kate Middleton's mother is known as someone who was quite self-made and ambitious. Probably not to this degree, obviously. But I did love seeing the wheels turn behind the eyes of Eve Best as she portrayed this character. What did you think of Kate's mom?
Well, I was of two minds. The show really makes Moo Moo out to be an unfortunate meddling parent. And I mentioned him in my intro to this section because the show doesn't, in my mind, go the full way with Kate Middleton's mother, but it does go a bit of a way. But for whatever specific reason, watching this, I started thinking to myself, she's not a villain. There's nothing wrong with this. We're acting like she did something wrong, but she really didn't. This is a mother, who says, okay, my child wants this. Let me see if I can help it. Don't we all wish our parents were this supportive when we were aiming for something when we were a kid,
Now, hang on a minute, Bubba, because I don't want my mother sending me out to Chile to just tear down a jungle with a machete just because I got a crush on a girl. That's just not my style. I mean, I want the girl, yes, but I don't want to do the work for it. That's for sure.
You get off your tush. Go to Chile one time. Come on, man. I think I just disagree. I think that it's not like Kate wasn't interested in William. She was. She had him on her wall. And so she's like, well, hey, why not take a swing? And I'm sure the daughter, if she said I didn't want to go to Chile, she could have gotten out of going to Chile. I mean, give me a break. So I thought it was perfect. I had no trouble.
So you thought all of that stuff that Kate was saying at the end of the episode, I missed out on a year of uni where I could have been with my friends, but no, now I'm a year behind. I had to do all of these extra special classes and everything, which you convinced me to sign up for. So you don't hold her mother responsible for any of that.
Not take any personal responsibility at all. Young actor playing the character Kate on this show. I didn't get to go to university. I got a year off. Oh my God, I would have loved a year off. And it's not like you lost your friends in any way. If you did, that's on you. Come on.
All right. This actress, is her name Meg Bellamy?
Yes, it is Meg Bellamy.
She's very compelling. I enjoyed her as Kate.
Wait, what's that supposed to mean, Matt?
I just mean,
do you have a crush on Kate just like William has a crush on Kate?
She's a little young for me, but okay. I thought that she did a really good job. Played somebody who was, a believable person who was questioning why her mother had done this for a little while, especially after she finds out what a loser William is in the library.
Oh, come on.
And I enjoyed the character portrayal. There's a neat little, you can probably find it on the X posts for the official X post of this actress Meg Bellamy and Ed McVeigh, who plays William. The way that they do a little one-on-one where they teach each other how they come to talk like those characters, like little inflections in words that make them sound like those characters. It was really interesting. So I checked that out. I think I retweeted it on my X posts. So check out for that at Lilibet Pod on Twitter, the site formerly known as. And we will, just check that out, because I think it's really cool to see the kind of hard work that these actors do. And I felt like it paid off for Kate in this episode.
You are pivoting away from the subject of Mummy. Do you have anything else to say about Miss Middleton?
I don't guess that I do. Do you?
No, but I just want to circle back to your point. We love this actress, Eve Best. She's been great in a lot of things, and she's really probably great in this as well, even though it's a very kind of smaller role in the piece.
Look at that. We could have just held that conversation for another second, because the wheel just landed on Will and Kate.
There you go. I do think the character Kate has a bit more personality than Will on the show. I've been so tough on it. Now, in previous episodes, I talked about how kind of it was like when the actor playing Will was doing scenes with the actress playing Diana, I thought, oh boy, they're really showing that this boy is observant, that his thoughts, just by non-verbally communicating how his character feels about it. But at least for me, since that point, the character of William has felt a little unmoored. How do you feel? Do you feel any differently than I do about Will being a well-rounded character, and or Kate being a well-rounded character?
You're right. Will he's become more reserved. Wouldn't that be the case, though, if you're number one, you've been through all of this stuff, you have to become more guarded. I think that Ed McVeigh is actually playing the character very well, because he is trying to be guarded, because he is fending off Harry. I think that you would, and I think it's unfortunate that this happens probably to a lot of the royal family, but I feel like they have to, kind of, as Elizabeth did all her life, have to play down her personality and just play the role.
Okay, because that's where you're exactly going, Matt, that I want to talk about.
Okay.
Elizabeth, the character on the show, is very reserved in a million scenes, in a million places, all these things. But the show would provide insight, scenes, peeks behind the curtain, so we would get to know young Lilibet. The peeks behind the curtain, William is still reserved. There are little moments of a bit of life, like, come on, security guards, you're supposed to keep up and do more than just look out for terrorist stuff. But they're not much. So Queen Elizabeth was very reserved, yet the show provided us with insight into who the character was. I did not feel like, in this episode especially, they provided any great insight into who the character William really was behind the curtain.
Okay, I can give you that, Bubba. I did feel like that with episode 5 and everything that happened between William and Charles, I didn't feel like I needed it, and it felt understandable to me that he would become more reserved.
Everybody has some characteristics behind the curtain. Everybody has, some life behind the curtain that lets us know who they are and how they really feel and their thoughts on things. Okay. And I just didn't get it from this portrayal in any way.
You got it much more from Kate. Well, how do you feel about the way that their relationship has kind of been very rocky in this particular episode? Does that feel dramatic enough for you?
Great question, Matt, because I did only go 6 out of 10. You're saying very rocky and very this, you're kind of describing it how it is. And yet, maybe this is just my own interpretation of relationships, especially when you're in high school or a freshman in university. To me, it didn't feel rocky. It felt kind of typical, like, okay, yeah, this is the way these things go. And so I don't suddenly go, oh, wow, what a dynamic relationship that's so rocky. I'm like, yeah, these things are tricky. These things are, you've got to find your way. And so, I'm sorry, I just didn't find it especially dramatic or shocking or anything. So Well, how about you? What did you like about it? You're talking about how it's dramatic and how there are these challenges and how he blew it. And yes, he did blow it. But, like if you've watched any TV or movies, characters have blown it much worse than William blew it in the library. So talk about what you liked about it.
One of the things that I did like about that particular scene, and by the way, justice for Lola,
Yes.
for Lola.
This composite character, justice for her.
Yes, she is a composite of all of the, I guess, the posh kind of girlfriends that William had prior to Kate. And so I loved him getting caught like that. I don't think, I agree with you. I don't think that they portrayed, he kind of moped around a little bit in the episode because things were going badly. I thought his apology was compelling. And I thought that her reaction to that apology was compelling. I thought the way that he tried to fend off Harry, because Harry's just, he's now in that position as the older brother. It's like, you're just too young to get where I'm coming from. Even though Harry knows that uni is only about sex. That's all it is. It's just sex.
Oh, brother, yeah.
Or and so he tries to provide him with condoms and what have you. But we'll talk about Harry in a second. Which is the only topic left on the wheel. I thought that, like you said, it was ordinary. And I found that to be pretty dramatic in itself, because it's like, oh, hey, these royal people who can put people between them and everybody else at any time, they have feelings too.
No, boy. When I was a freshman in college, I think I went through more stressful relationship drama than this. And so I think the show has done better relationship drama than this. And maybe by being true to life, it doesn't feel that dramatic to me. And so should we celebrate them for trying to be true to life, how this relationship may be started? So, I don't know what to say. I say if listeners disagree and do find this a very romantic meet cute or a very kind of dramatic, ooh, we know these two are going to end up together, but how in the world is it actually going to go? Please give us a feedback. I can be convinced, as I always like to say. And I always love hearing different opinions.
Exactly. And, I don't think that there's anything more real than choosing the subject that you're second best at as your major. Right? Only got a B in art history, baby. Probably did get an A in fart history, as Harry implied.
Let me say that actually was maybe the most shocking thing. I don't know, but I would assume a prince who doesn't have to worry about paying for college and doesn't have to worry about, oh, I want to get in this group. They'll he's the friggin' prince, future king. They're going to let him in any club or activity he wants to get involved in. I think the fact that he actually has kind of average grades might have been the most interesting part of this. Like, oh, okay. When I started at university, I struggled on certain grades too, because it's like a change from your earlier learning. So, yeah, there just wasn't much there for me. And, whether it's your dad, like there could be much more drama about someone trying to fit in at a college and actually having a security guard tail them every way. But the way this is even portrayed on the show, that security guard didn't, at least to me, feel that invasive of his life. Did it feel that way to you?
No, I felt like it felt to me like he was trying to stay out of his way. I'll give you one further. He has no ambition really to make new friends. He's hanging out. He's hanging out with only the people that he went to Eton with.
Good point. Well, that I guess I kind of understand, but because he's not making new friends and the show is, didn't spend time showing us him developing these friends previously, at the very least, it's just a pretty much like once again, there's just not much life there. Like think about when Charles went away to school. Wasn't there an episode about Charles going away to school and how he really was kind of separate and felt like all by himself? I don't remember his security guards, even really being a part of it. Like that was dramatic of here's somebody who really feels alone.
Think back to season 2 when he's at Gordonston and the security guards the security guard has to run the race with him at the end, and he loses him because Charles stops, and he has to go and get him and bring him in.
Well, no, that's a good point. Okay, so that did happen. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to trust your memory that did happen. But the drama so much more was about, is Prince Charles, who has kind of had a miserable earlier part of his educational world, is he going to be able to fit in and all that stuff? And so that really, to me, was dramatic. I think that worked as a piece of dramatic television in ways that maybe this one didn't.
One topic left on the wheel. Harry knows his job as number 2.
Boy, I want you
number 2.
Yeah, I want you to talk about this first, because to me, Harry was like the spice. He was like the pepper. He was like a little part of this episode, but so much of your talk has been focused on this. And so maybe we're going to put you back in the therapy couch. But why did this affect you so much? This portrayal of Harry, this character of Harry being, almost like the buddy in a one 80s teen comedy thing. He's the buddy of like, yeah, let's go to college and go crazy, To me, he was just a spice on the episode. I really didn't take much from Harry. Why did Harry affect you so much, Matt?
I just feel like that the show has slighted his character quite a bit.
Okay.
Does the real Harry, can you picture the real Harry drinking at 13?
Yeah. I can imagine a lot of kids drinking at 13. That doesn't seem,
as much as we see him drink it in that episode.
Sure. You all.
Well, they are afforded unsupervised opportunities that others are not.
Right, but we all know those kids. I maybe I'm, speaking too kindly, but that cousin who sneaks off at a reunion to go sneak a sip of beer or drink a beer. Like, these things, to me, they didn't seem that particularly shocking. I mean, I understand that Harry is in this odd position of he's number 2, so he is really a good parallel to Princess Margaret. But on the flip side, I think about, who are Prince Charles's younger brothers? I mean, do they really even have any kind of role in the show at all? And so they show up, they have a little bit of spice, but otherwise the show doesn't remember them. And so Harry is playing that type of role on the show. To me, he's just okay, I'm there. It's the sassy guy.
All right, I'm going to put you in a really difficult position, Bubba.
All right, can't wait.
Okay, you're 16 years old. Yeah. Your older brother just graduated from Eton.
All right, sure.
Your whole family's gathered around, and you decide that the best possible gift to give him is condoms. Are you doing that?
Well, let me say, I am the oldest son, so I'm not the younger brother trying to tease or pull one on the older brother. So I don't really have anybody like that in my thing. But we played. So sorry, how old is he supposed to be in this again?
I would say he's like 2 years younger than William, right?
So he's 16, 15, 16.
15, 16, somewhere in there.
Okay, no, but what I did do, this is not kind of as an adult in content at all, but I remember one Christmas, I got my siblings and my grandparents even real gifts, but then I would also get them a gag gift. So I got my grandmother, a real gift. Here you go, Granny. Here's a Christmas present. But I also got her some Ben Gay. I'm like, here's some stuff for your joints. One of my sisters, her hair was always tangled. So I got her a real present, but I got her this thing they used to sell in the 80s as a kid. It was called No More Tangles stuff. And so they were gag gifts that, okay, I was, at this time I was probably, 11 or 12, but they were still gag gifts that were meant to kind of tease my siblings in a way, and my grandmother in the Ben Gay, wrapping up Ben Gay.
All right.
So
if your grandmother's the queen, if your grandmother's the Queen of England, are you doing that?
Let me say that once again, I'm going off the show as it's been presented. They kind of have what I would call sharp tongues. They do like to razz each other. Hopefully that translates across the pond, what I'm trying to get across,
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, I've seen all the characters do that a bit, all the characters kind of give zingers to each other. So Yeah, I think, even if my grandmother's the queen, maybe I would zing her. It feels like something that this family, the way it's portrayed on this show, they do. Certainly not, not at every moment. There's appropriate and inappropriate moments, but it feels like something this family did.
Okay.
I understand that he is kind of being a mess up and almost reveling in his being hey, I'm a number 2, so I get to do whatever the hell I want, and it doesn't matter. And
True.
so, I just, once again, to me, he's like a spice in the episode. The meat of the episode should be William, but because I can't get a good grasp on this character, this episode is probably the one I was least engaged with. There might have been episodes I even liked less, but I would rate them higher because I would engaged with them more. Where in this one, it was like, okay, that happened.
Okay, then let's get your 65-second recap for Season 6, Episode 8, Ritz. The episode takes place over a couple of different time periods, the first being 1945 during the Victory over Europe celebrations. Here, Margaret and Elizabeth sneak out of the palace to participate in the celebrations with Porchy and Pete Townsend, and while Margaret, Porchy, and Townsend celebrate in the upstairs ballroom, Elizabeth finds herself drawn to considerably more wild party occurring in the downstairs club. This particular night is the one that Margaret continually reminds the present-day queen of the life that she actually loved and could have had if not for being queen. Over a series of several CVAs, we see Margaret's health deteriorate, but she continues to live life to the fullest where she can, blaming her imaginary friend, Cousin Halifax, for the faux pas. At Margaret's 70th birthday party, Elizabeth actually gets sentimental, and she begins spending time with Margaret, reading to her during her last night on Earth. In Margaret's final moments, she relives the end of the long night out on VE Day and says goodbye to her sister. The end title card tells us that Margaret died peacefully in her sleep at age 71 on the morning of February 9th, 2002.
Wow, this wheel's just divided in half.
Let's talk about, once again, I said this earlier, let's talk about a character that the show has caused us to really have empathy for, have really care about. We understand the trials and tribulations this character has gone through across a lifetime. And now they're at the end, and it's sad. It's sad that maybe their life didn't, they didn't reach the highs that they wanted their life to have. But on the flip side, she did seem, she did have her pleasures. She did have her happy places, her happy things to do. And it's tragic to see that, these kind of betray her and that she can't enjoy her life the way she wants to all the way to the end. But this character has a lot of dignity. This character had a lot of life. And I think, when she leaves, it's sad because losing a life like that is sad, but I also feel it was a great tribute to what Princess Margaret had to do in her life and what she had to put up with. So I loved seeing it. I think when you get to the end of a show, you need episodes like this. And I thought it was practically perfect. What about you?
The shower scene really disturbed me. That one more so than the one in the bedroom. Man. That shower scene was just horrific, man.
Yes.
And so well shot to make it that way. It was just amazing. The steam coming under the door, and with the aria playing on the radio, and just horror. These things felt so real to me. And to me, those last moments where older Margaret, passing Margaret, is telling young Elizabeth, I won't be here anymore, but I'll always be by your side. That to me was just an emulation of her last thoughts as she was passing away. And that was really powerful to me. It's like, if you're capable, that's the other thing that's so horrific about this, is how her body has failed her, but her mind is still there. Just so well done. It was so well done. And I can't, I don't know what kind of experience this actress has had with people with strokes, or what kind of experience, Peter Morgan or has had with writing these, or what kind of experience that they've lived with people who have suffered from these. But CVAs are no joke, man. Do whatever you got to do to keep your vessels open, folks. I mean, it can be, just as we saw here, one of the most horrific things to have your mind working pretty functionally, perfectly, but your body just won't do what your conscious brain tells you to do.
Matt, if you don't mind, talk about that a bit some more. What did you say? CVAs? What are you trying to get us to be aware of?
That's a stroke, right?
Okay.
It's a cerebral vascular accident is what we call it today. People stop eating French fries. If you don't want this to happen to you, just stop eating French fries, for crying out loud.
Really?
I know
That's
it's the most
the
American
trick?
thing to do.
This is crazy. I didn't know this. So wait a minute. So
as plaque builds up in your blood vessels, that's where the accident happens, because sometimes that plaque gets free and it's got to go all the way through your system to get back to your heart.
Oh wow.
So that's why heart attacks and strokes happen. For the most part, it's because, if in the case of Margaret, she's done so much smoking that her veins have already constricted to the point where it's hard for anything to get through, even blood. But any kind of little blockage can be much more significant. And that stuff just scares the crap out of me. You can't eliminate it completely, but there are things that people can do to make it much less likely to happen. And
let's hear them. We want to save Princess Margaret. What do we need to do?
These are all the things that should be done.
All right.
That I don't do.
Oh no. Okay.
Stop smoking. Don't eat fried foods.
So is there any way I can eat French fries and then take a pill so it cures it, or it's just all bad?
You can eat French fries, just don't fry them. Just eat the raw potatoes. You'll be fine.
Okay. Raw potatoes. No problem.
Yeah.
And you're killing us. No hash browns, all the great stuff. Let's get back to Margaret. It's painful to see somebody who's been told, hey, quit the drinking, quit the smoking. Should we almost, dare I say it, be proud that she was like, I want to go out the way I want to? Or is it sad to see a character we really care about unable to overcome these, cravings that she has?
That's a very interesting question. For me personally, she's told, and this is still the case, that once you have your first stroke, chances are you're going to have another one.
And there's just like nothing you can do, or?
Well, she could have done the things that they recommended to her, but it would have been absolutely no guarantee. It still would have been very likely that she would have a second one. The thing that you need to do is preventive. Do it before the first one happens.
Right.
You're much better off. But once she has that news, I kind of respect her for deciding to be who she wants to be. Going out on her, not really on her own terms, but because even at the end of the episode, she says, I'm not ready to leave this party.
Good. Yeah.
On the other hand, I guess it becomes a quantity versus quality of life, right? And what you perceive that quality to be. But I'm for it. I'm like I said, don't do all those things except for the fact that I do all those things. So that's my perspective on it. How about you? I mean, is it a quantity versus quality issue for you, or do you think Margaret needed help, or what do you think?
It is just heartbreaking to see it, but once again, I feel like in some ways that's who she was. She was a free spirit. For a lot of the early seasons of The Crown, she's like, in my opinion, the best character on the show. And so we've grown to care about her. She was a free spirit. It's heartbreaking that she left this mortal coil so early in her life. But it wasn't exactly, it wasn't a tearjerker. Let's put it that way. It's more like that's who she is. Probably that's what you should always want to be in your life, is who you are. And so It was sad, but not, not a heartbreaker. How about that?
Well, let's find a middle ground on the wheel here, and let's just talk about Margaret's perspective of the 1945. And
well, it's funny you talk about that, Matt. In your intro, you were talking about Margaret in the 1945. Before I was talking about how Harry really felt like a spice, not really the point of the previous episode. I'm not sure I learned much about Margaret in the 1945 flashback at all. To me, the 1945 flashback was all about Elizabeth and how she is, always does rebellion in baby steps, even at that young an age. So I don't know.
Right.
Did you find Margaret in 1945 to be truly insightful into the character?
Well, what I found insightful about it was the fact that she kept bringing it up in the show, in the episode's present day,
okay,
which means that it left a great impression on her. And the thing that really got me, and this does pertain to Elizabeth also, but it also shows me how much Margaret has come to appreciate Elizabeth, despite all of the fights that they had about Peter Townsend, despite whatever was going on in the 60s. This to me shows that at the end of her life, Margaret has clung to the one thing that has always been true to her, in the fact that no matter who she has always looked up to her sister and her sister's abilities to do the job. And to me, that comes through when she tells Porchy and a young Pete Townsend when they get to the downstairs of the club, "Are you kidding? We're not pulling her out of here. This is the most fun she's ever had in her whole life. We're going to let her have this." I loved that. To me, it showed, as much as we've seen Margaret and Elizabeth go back and forth, or tolerate, or just be frank with one another, this is the first time I ever saw Margaret look at Elizabeth with big eyes and say, "That's my sister." The walk back while Elizabeth is chewing gum, and Margaret is just delighted by that. All of these things just said so much to me about the way that Margaret felt about Elizabeth, probably her entire life, that you miss in those confrontations.
Okay. All right. I guess fair enough. I didn't take it that way, but sure.
Well, see, like I said, I go left field on all this stuff sometimes.
At this point, and forgive me if I'm already confusing the timeline a bit, at this point, has her uncle abdicated the throne and her dad is king and she is the heir apparent?
Yeah, George was king during World War II. He was, yeah.
Okay.
So she is the heir now.
Right. So to me, it's exactly what I described before. It's tiptoeing into rebellion, tiptoeing into a world that, into anything. Like, if you were somebody who felt the chains of propriety and the chains of, okay, now I'm the heir, I will be the would-be ruler. And if you were like, okay, I just need a day where I can take off, a moment where I can take off and not have these pressures and have all the fun in the world, she didn't attack it with gusto, right? Sneaking out was still a bit of a outside her comfort zone. And so that's how she and Margaret were really different. Margaret would take those moments to really have complete freedom, to where even at this young age, we see Elizabeth as somebody who is not willing to give themselves the complete freedom that maybe somebody would want them to have. How about that?
Yeah. Elizabeth is the one who goes on downstairs and doesn't tell anybody they're friends, because she's worried it's the only opportunity she's ever going to have, right?
Yeah.
So,
but it's also, even in the sneak out, Porchy was there, right? Like, this is not, I'm going to completely let my hair down and this is going to be the party to end all parties, people.
Oh, that's true. I kind of loved the evolution of Elizabeth's losing a little bit of her naivete, or at least a little bit of her uptightness, starting with seeing that couple kiss out in the square and going
How
going
dare
all the way
they
through
in public?
Yeah, in public.
Good
For crying out loud.
heavens!
Wow, I bet her and Philip never did that.
Please, let's hope not.
So it's just I loved seeing that evolution to the point where there's this guy, she's enjoying the sound of the music.
Yep.
There's a handsome man, young man, Navy guy or Army guy, who's invited her to come downstairs. Then she sees this hateful dude who says, that's just a place for, we're not even going to say, what the racial implication of all of that was.
Yeah, it's a very dismissive person who may have had backwards, what year is this again? 1940s values that weren't even cool in 1940s. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, and, I've always thought of the UK as slightly more progressive towards that than the United States, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So, if for no other reason, she understands how hateful that is and does it in spite of him, which I love that little bit of evolution of rebelliousness in her. It's like, well, screw my friends. I'm going to go down here and see what this is about. And it's more out of curiosity, I think, than, just out of urge or anything else, because her curiosity, people are kissing in public. Well, what else am I going to see today? So, but she already knew how to do those dances. So she's been paying attention to something.
What are you trying to say there, Matt?
She's been paying attention to something. That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
And she has always had that. That's one of the beautiful things about what Margaret realizes, is that Elizabeth has always had that nature in her, has always wanted to be that person, but never could. Yeah. And here, the anonymous nature of all of this makes it very easy for her to just do this, even if it's just once. But Margaret realizes then what of sacrifice that was for Elizabeth's entire life. And that, to me, is the big lesson in this episode that I feel carries through in the finales, or the final two episodes.
Okay. Well, I haven't watched them yet, listeners. I've been good. I've been trying to present a honest opinion on these episodes and not, have the later episodes influence me in any way, unlike Matt. But,
No, I'm bad. That's bad. Right. What else about Elizabeth in 1945? Anything? Or Elizabeth in present day, for that matter?
I want to go to Elizabeth in present day. And thank goodness I've not had to go through this tragedy in my life of losing a sibling.
Yeah.
But this is, especially a younger sibling, this is just complete. We know, because once again, this is a 6-season experience. We know how much they mean to each other. And to see her have to see her sister like this, it's really, it's heartbreaking, not only for Margaret's fate, but also for how Elizabeth is losing this important person in her life.
I was so moved by that shot of after she was reading to Margaret and she goes to the door and she looks back, and you just know that that's the show is portraying it, that it's the last time that she's going to see her before it goes into, the completion of here's what happened portion of the 1945. There's a cut that was played underneath that we're covering in the musical analysis this week. And the camera slowly pans in on her. Imelda Staunton was so fantastic in that moment. It was incredible. She was saying goodbye, and that was so hard to watch.
Yeah, crazy moment. And again, I want to say that it's a crazy moment for us viewers. We, 6 seasons brought us to this place, and that's why we love this show. I thought it was great.
Anything else before we move on to the history notes, Bubba?
No, we've talked so much about our feelings, but let's get to the facts. Give us those history notes.
Here they come for both episodes, Alma Mater and Ritz.
Here are your history notes for Season 6, Episodes 7 and 8. For the 7th episode, E-Online News speculates that it is highly unlikely that 14-year-old Kate Middleton would be snipping the picture out of magazines after she and her mom, Carol Middleton, spotted him and Diana in the street selling copies of The Big Issue for charity. However, the prince has been known to do that in real life. William and Kate were friends before they got together, with Kate dating fourth-year Rupert Finch, although William did not date anyone named Lola. Lola Airedale Cavendish Kincaid is a fictional character. Lola, being described from a family so posh they had to name it thrice, functions as a stand-in composite of all of Williams's posh ex-girlfriends. Source: Town and Country. For episode 8, the princesses were actually allowed to go out among the crowds during the VE Day celebrations, though they did not stay out all night. They went out with a group totaling 16 into the crowds, including the nanny Crawfie, several friends their own age, and military protection, including Group Captain Peter Townsend. Source: The Guardian. Princess Margaret is known to have had an imaginary friend named Cousin Halifax. Source on this: the channel My5 documentary Royals at War and the International Business Times. Porchy did in fact die on 9/11. He died on the operating table that day, having suffered a heart attack moments after the second plane hit the World Trade Center, an event that he and his wife saw live on TV, according to Bettel Smith's 2012 biography, Elizabeth the Queen. And Margaret's wishes for her funeral portrayed to Elizabeth in the show did in fact partially reflect reality. On February 15th, a rose-colored coffin was draped with white roses and pink tulips, and Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake played as mourners filed into St. George's Chapel in Windsor for the private funeral Margaret had requested, according to reports from the day. After the service, she became the first member of the royal family in 60 years to be cremated, her ashes interred in the family vault next to her father, King George VI. Source: E-Online. And those are your history notes for these episodes. You'll find all of the links in the show notes.
Order! Order!
Coach T, what the hell are you doing here?
Oh my goodness.
Order!
This podcast has gone to hell if we've invited Coach T here for this
I am
serious
the
show.
chairman of the House of Lords, and today we are having a parliamentary debate. We have an issue here. Which actor looks most like the historical characters they play?
Wow. So which actor looks, physically the most like the character they're portraying? And we have 6 seasons worth of characters to talk about. And I think there are some debate. There may be also, we should add as a debate, which character looks the least like the character they're portraying in history. But I'm going to go positive now. And I've looked at some of these pictures. And once again, sometimes we have 3 actresses or actors portraying one character over time. And it's like, okay, who looks the most like their character? I'm going to give my first runner-up position to the actress Claudia Harrison, who portrays Princess Anne. I think at the right angle, this actress really does look a lot like Princess Anne. And I think it's a credit to the show that Princess Anne, I mentioned how Prince Charles's younger brothers don't seem to be characters really on the show, glorified extras, secondary actors, where Claudia Harrison has been a constant presence on the show. And this, what I would call the second version of Princess Anne, portrayed by actress Claudia Harrison, I think she really does look a lot like Princess Anne from the photos. So that's my first nominee. She's not my number one, but she's my first nominee. What says you, Matt Murdock?
Well, I'm going to take you a Princess Anne, and I'm going to raise you a Prince Charles, and I'm going to go with Josh O'Connell in seasons 3 and 4 as Charles. And perhaps I'm implying mannerisms or applying mannerisms and that type of thing to Charles and Josh O'Connell's performance more so than actual physical looks. But there is a little bit more of a similarity there than any of the other people who have played Charles, although seasons 1 and 2, it was just a kid playing him, so it doesn't really matter. But I think that he's definitely much closer to the way I imagine Charles than Dominic West, although Dominic West does great jobs with the gestures and all of that stuff too. But even the inflection and everything that Josh O'Connell did in seasons 3 and 4 really, to me, evoked at least a great caricature of Charles, and a much more accurate caricature of Charles than I expected.
That's pretty good. And so is Josh O'Connell your number one? Like, okay, this person really looks the most like the real person.
I am going to go with Josh O'Connell as my number one because I'm tired of looking at photos.
Very honest there. All right, I'm going to go with possibly a shocking choice and one that people may disagree with. And it is, once again, these people are not identical twins. But when I look at somebody and I go, okay, I could really see how they could be a version of this real life historical figure. I don't think, certainly Claire Foy, who's a great actress who really carried this show through the early seasons, I don't think she very much looks like Queen Elizabeth did at that age. I certainly don't think Vanessa Kirby, as young as the youngest version in those early seasons of Princess Margaret, looked much of anything like Princess Margaret. But this character, this season, I think, once again, it's not an identical twin, but you're like, okay, I see it. I think this works. And that's an actress you mentioned earlier, Matt. That is Meg Bellamy, who is playing young Kate Middleton. I think she really does look like Kate. Like, maybe it's even more the coloring than her specific face, but I think they really did find somebody who you're like, okay, yeah, that makes sense that she would portray Kate Middleton at this time in her life. So I'm going throughout the entire series. That's what's so crazy. I'm going with this actress who was introduced at the end, Meg Bellamy, as the most accurate physical portrayal of the character in real life.
Excellent. Do we want to do leasts?
Oh boy. I think
we're both going to come up with the same answer, unfortunately.
Yeah, we might. So let's hear it. Boy, I think there's a lot of nominees, but who do you think is the least like the character they portray on the show physically? Like you're like, okay, how could anybody confuse these two people for being the same person?
Dominic West. I mean, I love the way he plays Charles, but man, he just doesn't look anything like Charles. He's too good looking.
Well, again, I kind of think that's true of Vanessa Kirby and Claire Foy in those early years. You are right. Dominic West really does it in any kind of way. I mean, in very superficial ways, looks a bit like, you can squint and you can kind of see it, but yeah, it is not good. I mean, they're not the same person in any sort of way.
Yeah. And whereas with Josh, I did let other things kind of play into it. I can't with Charles as far as Dominic West goes, because I think his voice, I think he does very good. I think to me, I think that his mannerisms are pretty good too. But it's just, I look at him and I say, it's a guy playing Charles. It's not Charles. And we've always tried to look at this as a drama, or you have. I've always tried to, up until, last season, I really tried to just look at it from a historical perspective completely. But with this guy, I can't abandon. I'm not saying it takes me out of the moment. I'm just saying he just doesn't, there's always this kind of thing. It's like, he did a really good job playing a guy that he looks nothing like.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's really fair. I would love it if I always mention on these podcasts that I'm not really a royal watcher. I've not been somebody, studying them over the years. I would love for you, our listeners, to tell us if we're right, if we're wrong, who you think has been the most accurate portrayal. If you really followed this family and these royals for all these years, who do you think maybe looks the most accurate? Who do you think their portrayal is the most accurate? I would love to hear it.
That's right. At Lilibet Pod on the site formerly known as Twitter, or at the word double, the letters PHQ across all social medias. You can also send emails to math.ablog@gmail.com. We've only got one episode left, folks. So get those feedbacks in for this episode, for all prior episodes, as soon as possible. We'll be recording it shortly after 2024 begins. So get them in quickly. Get them in by New Year's to be sure. And if you are happen to catch this, I know you will on the audio, but I don't know if you'll get it in the video podcast or on the YouTube channel before December 31st. I'll try to get the video to Bubba as quickly as I can. But if you're hearing this voice, we have 9,800 viewers of my YouTube contest.
Oh, man.
We have one entry. Get your chance in. It's a $100 gift card from Amazon. So find the YouTube link in the show notes, and by New Year's Day of 2024. If you're hearing this after that, too late. Sorry. But by New Year's Day 2024, listen to the 5 sounds that I make. Try to guess what words I was trying to say. And the person with the most correct guesses wins. Or if there's a tie, we will, of course, randomly pick between the ones who guess the most. Time for my musical analysis, Bubba.
Heck yeah.
This time it's all about the piano. If you don't like music stuff, you can skip ahead 10 minutes, 45 seconds.
The power of a sustained piano, be it just by holding a note out while other notes are playing, or by using the actual sustain pedal, is something that we hear throughout both of these episodes, actually. And I'm going to get to that in just a minute, but first I want to talk about the music supervisor stuff, as we always do. What tunes weren't composed by Fitz in these episodes? Let's look at episode 7. You have, of course, the opening of Peggy Lee singing the Christmas Waltz. That tune is actually also sung by Margaret at the Christmas party as well. Naturally, they're different performances, but they both had to be licensed in order to be used. We have the Chemical Brothers, Hey Boy, Hey Girl, and that's when we first see William and Harry partying. We have Stardust doing Music Sounds Better With You. That's when William meets Lola, and it's also used during the end credits. Now, I couldn't identify the tune in the background as Kate sees William from the restaurant window, nor could I identify the music coming from above William's room when he's trying to sleep. So if you have any idea of what those are, please let me know at Lilibet Pod on the site formerly known as Twitter. The final piece that I found in this episode, Portishead, Glory Box, and that's at the Balmoral party. For episode 8, the big band piece is playing as Elizabeth and Margaret are venturing out onto the streets, is Roll 'Em by Benny Goodman. The piece playing while Margaret is reciting her poem and seemingly having her first CVA, Orchestral Overtures, Me Ting Is Mine. We have Julie London performing Why Don't You Do Right during Margaret's first rehabilitation. We have La Travista Act 1, Folly, Delirio, Vano e Questo, and Semper Libra during the shower sequence. Now, I couldn't identify the music that Elizabeth and Porchy danced to at the Ritz back in the past, nor the band or tune that actually played live at the Downstairs Club. Obviously, Margaret sings a little bit of It Ain't My Fault as she's talking to Elizabeth earlier in the episode, but I could not find the artists who were live performing that. So again, if you have information, let me know. One that was easy to identify was Mozart's Sonata in B-flat major, and that is when Margaret is struggling with her tea. When Elizabeth actually gets invited to the Downstairs Club at the Ritz, the piece that is playing in the background there is Big Fat Tuesday by Bigger Story Music. And then, of course, a real gut-wrencher is the Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered during the ending credits. That's actually, I think, the performance from season 1, because you can hear King George singing just a little bit in the background there, which made the ending very poignant for me. But also happy in a way, because I kind of like to think of it as Margaret is now once again singing with her dad. Now we're talking about how the piano, when notes are sustained, how that can create certain effects. And in both the piece in episode 7, which is called William, by the way, on the season 6 official soundtrack, although most of the versions that you hear in this episode probably are not directly from that recording seems to be applied more to the next big William episode. I won't say any more because I don't want to spoil anything for those of you who haven't gotten there yet. But it's a theme that we've actually heard before, and we heard it applied to Elizabeth when she was kind of worried about Prince Philip and his companion and other aspects that revolved around Elizabeth, but most of it was due to love. And so that's kind of the general thematic thing. Actually, probably a love that is a little bit tentative, as it was in the moment there for Elizabeth, and as it is for Philip here regarding Kate. But the theme sounds like this. Again, we heard this in season 5, and so I'm not going to break it down because I think I actually broke it down last season. It was one of the pieces that we did our musical analysis for last year. But I do want to point out that because those notes hold out, and it's either because the sustain pedal is held while other notes are playing with it. What kind of effect does a string instrument have when it's held open like that? Either by just leaving your thumb or your finger or whatever on the piano key, or by physically holding down the sustain pedal where all of the notes, the little buffers, are taken off of the strings. Well, what that allows is any other notes that are played start to affect the harmonic sequence of the notes that are being held. Part of where the timbre comes from, the way that the instrument sounds, comes from what we call its harmonic sequence. That means that when you play the note, you hear the main note, but there are actually also what we call overtones that also play. And they can be a fifth, an octave and a third, all different kinds of intervals, distances between notes that comprise and create the sound of that note, not the pitch. The pitch is predominantly what we hear as the fundamental. The note that you see on the page is the note that you hear primarily. But how open or how closed or how distant or how close that note sounds does depend on the harmonics that ring through. And that creates some interesting effects. Specifically for a piano, it generally creates a feeling of almost kind of an automatic type of reverb. In other words, everything sounds like it's in a bigger space. And that's because you have not only the sound frequencies from the note that you've held open, but also the sound frequencies from notes that are being played while that note is being held open. Now, I will say that the season 6 official soundtrack version of William also does something else that's not related to the sustain pedal, but related to rhythm. There are a lot more subdivisions in the melody. We have the basic eighth note type of subdivision happening with the melody in its normal way. But there's also, in the season 6 official version, this constant eighth note thing that actually is staccato. There's separations in between each note that generate a little more energy than the way we heard it with the Queen, which makes more sense. A young man is going to have much more energy than an older woman or an older person. I mean, everybody's got more energy than me. So when you go to listen to the season 6 official soundtrack, you won't have heard this as much present in this particular episode, but you will in a future episode. There is this eighth note subdivision that is driving everything that sounds like this. Probably the closest that we get to that in this particular episode is during the pool sequence. But let's turn to episode 8. And again, this episode is emotional for me, because I get that way. But one of the pieces that was more emotional wasn't about Margaret per se, as it was about Elizabeth. And the piece is found in the season 6 official soundtrack, and it's called Sacrifice. Once again, you will hear how a note being held underneath while melody plays on top of it makes everything start to sound more open. The melody itself, again, is played on the piano, and is really more just kind of an arpeggiation of the harmony, but it really works effectively melodically as well. It sounds like this. The first note of each, measure, and these measures are counted in 3. It's in 3/4 time or waltz time. But the first note is always held while the other notes are played. And that helps not only that note that's held to sound more open, but it also gives a sense of all of the other notes being open because the harmonic sequence, the overtones of that note, is helping to contribute to the new strings that are opened by you depressing them. And it's a lovely enough harmony. The fact that it starts in minor and kind of drifts towards the relative major and back and is really centered around that F chord if we were in A minor, which would be the 4 chord in the major or the flat 6 in the minor. Don't worry about the numbers. What that does is it leaves things open to change. And that's where the sustain pedal comes back in towards the end. As Elizabeth is looking from the door at her sister, and the camera closes in on her, we hear this sequence. Because the sustain pedal is employed, the last 2 notes of the measure that are really just a half step apart continue to ring, and that creates an extra sense of tension. Not only are we on the G chord, which tends to make us want to lead to the C, or want to lead back to the A minor, but that sustaining effect makes it linger, makes it more poignant, makes it deeper. And these are all psychological effects that are considered by a composer. Not only that, but it just feels unresolved. Was there one more thing that Elizabeth should have said to Margaret? We'll never know. And that's the musical analysis for this week.
Now, Matt, I really think you should have had this musical section be about The Crown, since that's what the podcast is about. I know The Piano was a great movie starring Holly Hunter, but you wanted to talk about that for some reason on this podcast. I guess that makes sense.
You did not listen to my musical segment at all.
But you said it was about the piano.
I said it was about the piano. I forgot to add that it was about the piano's role in these episodes.
Oh, wow.
Which just goes to prove that you didn't listen to the segment. Regardless of that, I know people who did listen to the segments that we do because they've sent feedback in.
Well, thank you.
And for our review of episodes 2 and 3 of season 6, we heard from MSW8839. I'm sorry, I didn't check your YouTube page to see what name that actually goes with, but that's your handle, who said, wanted to say that psychic was not good. She sees 2 people are going to die within weeks and gives them some garbage feel-good reading. By the way, I love your funny and informative show. Thank you so much for the great comment. And we loved your joke. I think that's great. It's true. That's awful, woman. You didn't tell them they're going to die. Maybe she's one of those people who's like, better that they don't know.
She wanted to make sure she would be paid. She thought, well, if they know they're going to,
Yeah. That's why you get the money up front.
Exactly right.
So we also got a review back from season 6, episode 1. This is from our Double L.
Double L?
Yeah. Donut Buzzcut, the loyal listener.
Yes.
Who says, wanted to add something in that I forgot to add into the show notes, or into the history notes. But they added that Princess Margaret did not actually attend Camilla's 50th birthday. So thank you so much, Donut Buzzcut, for catching up with us. I know that you said that you were a little delayed in catching up with our podcast, but thank you so much for contributing. I apologize for not including that in the notes. I did have that jostled down. I just forgot to read it for some reason. So thank you very much for that information, Donut Buzzcut. We also have a couple of bits of feedback from another Double L.
Double L?
loyal listener.
Wow.
This is All Mods Cons, who is at ZephyrCat7 on YouTube,
Heck yeah.
who had some very nice things to say about our podcast. First of all, great podcast and analysis as usual. This channel is fantastic. I wonder if they're
Wow.
watching other videos of yours, Bubba.
Let's
because
hope.
it can't be just talking about the ones that I do. So thank you very much for that. And what else does ZephyrCat7 say, Bubba, about our episode 5 and 6 review?
Well, they wrote, I love the time you give any shows that you review. You guys always deep dive with analysis while also keeping it light and fun with your games. Matt, I think it's sweet that you wear your heart on your sleeve. Once again, that's from ZephyrCat7, not from me, Bubba. ZephyrCat continues, my only complaint with this podcast is you guys aren't on camera. It's more interesting when I can see your facial expressions. Well, good point. They end up by saying overall, they rate that podcast about season 6, episode 5 and 6, 10 triple T's out of 10.
Wait, triple T's?
Thoughts terrifically timed.
Aw.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And sorry you didn't see our faces again this time. You see mine at the beginning of every podcast, but then I turn the camera off and Bubba never turns his camera on because his room is a disaster. You don't want to see what's behind him. That's what it is. Oh, Bubba, you know me and polls. We asked, we kind of covered this before, but we got our final results for these polls for episodes 5 and 6, rating them for season 6, episode 6. 42.9% called it great, 23.8% called it good,
Okay.
19% called it fair, and 14.3% called it not so good.
Wow. Wow. That is probably the toughest not so good we've had, don't you think?
I think so. Here's another one, which didn't get a whole lot of votes, but the episode 5 was split even more weirdly, although nobody said it was not so good. Nobody said it was good. They either said it was great or fair. 77.8% saying it was great, 22.2% saying fair. Now, we did some what's worse, and I was so hoping that I might be able to say something like, Bubba, this has never happened before, except all of these have happened before. They're splits.
Thank God. Thank goodness.
What's worse, whiskey or beer? And Bubba, you won. 81.8% said whiskey is worse.
Dang.
Everybody likes beer better than whiskey, evidently. Although when you're a kid, I could see why that would be a compelling argument that whiskey is worse. What about this one for episode 5? Relying on your brother's aim to get something in your mouth, or relying on an old movie projector to reinvigorate memories.
Yep.
Brother's aim, definitely worse. She made a great argument about sanitation problems there. 75% said that the brother's aim is relying on that aim to be worse.
Yeah.
Although it's really relying on the aim really has nothing to do with the sanitation of the hands. But, you know, that's the way the folks voted. So I will accept these results.
Trust the people, Matt.
Let's see. Episode 6. Here was the what's worse that we did. And Bubba, we really screwed up on this.
Thank God.
We both argued who the Lord High Admiral of the Wash is incorrectly. You said it was sand. I said it was laundry.
Well, I said it was like tidal sand. Give me some credit here.
Okay, well, you get partial credit and you win the poll.
Yay.
No, wait a minute. I won this poll. This has never happened before where I announced
that has never happened before. Yeah, okay.
Where I won, 66.7% said that Lord High Admiral of the Wash was worse than the Yeoman of the China Pantry.
Man, a lot of tough titles there over with our friends in jolly old England.
Yeah, titles for titles. Bubba,
yeah,
we only have 1/30 of the entire series left to cover.
Well, unlike you, I have not watched it, so I am going to, I think I've seen some screen grabs of some stuff on Twitter that I wish I hadn't seen. But listeners, when we have our next podcast, I'm going to give you my honest thoughts on these final 2 episodes, which have a very big job. How do you wrap up this sixth season, who knows how many year journey we've been on successfully in a way that, kind of rewards us for having gone on this journey. That's what I'll be talking about with my honest thoughts on the next pod.
Excellent. And you can find him at Fit and Trim on Twitter, FITTENTRIM. But more importantly, you can find him at the word double letters PHQ across all social medias. Or you can find the YouTube channel, youtube.com/@ the word double the letter P, the word media. I'm mattsaudioblog@gmail.com for emails. Lilibet Pod on the site formerly known as Twitter. Bubba.
Yeah.
We're going to have a special guest too.
We are?
Yeah, I challenged someone to actually come on the podcast, and he said, "Yeah, I'll see your little challenge, Matt. I'm coming on."
I can't believe King Charles met your call. So this is
Not
great.
that King Charles, but he is a king.
Wait.
He's Bill Copper.
Well, I would love Bill to be on, but now that I set my sights on getting King Charles on the podcast, it's like, okay.
Yeah. Sorry, Bill. You're out.
Yeah, fine. Well, that's going to be great. He's going to be a wonderful guest to give us thoughts on this wonderful show.
Yes, he will. He gave great thoughts for episodes 5 or for the part 1. So we can't wait to hear what he thought of part 2. And until then, we'll see you next time on Podcast Lilibet. Or we won't see you because we won't have the camera on.
Oh.